this. After the election, we're going to go back to one or two guests a show, and we're going to continue with our long-form format. If you want to destroy America, how would you do it? Does that sound provocative? It's not intended to be. If you want to destroy America, how would you do it? Well, let me suggest to you, America's being destroyed. If you want to destroy America, then you vote Democrat. Because the Democrat Party has been unmasked. Its policies and programs are delusional and destructive, and they are dismantling the most fabulous nation on earth right before your eyes. Capitalism stands in the way of a planned socialist economy, which they support. So they seek to deconstruct capitalism. In order to fundamentally transform America, you must seize power by perverting and sabotaging our Constitution, legal and voting systems. That's what they're doing. The American people have not knowingly or voluntarily surrendered their liberty, property, society, and Constitution to the reprobates and malcontents within the Democrat Party and who are among us. It's a slow process, and it's packaged in deceit and propaganda and lies. You are said to be the beneficiary of these designs when in fact you are the targets. The Democrat Party doesn't seek to improve society, it seeks to destroy it, then replace it. The Democrat Party sees your economic struggles and even impoverishment resulting from their policies and programs as a necessary condition to imposing its ideological ends and imagined paradise on an unwilling and unsuspecting people. It is therefore necessary to use taxes, regulations, executive orders, a massive bureaucracy, issuing hundreds and hundreds of dictates to reorder society, the economy, and the government. It is necessary to silence, humiliate, and shame contrary voices, as conformity is essential. And therefore you need truth squads. And therefore you need the government working with Silicon Valley oligarchs and the like. It is necessary to squelch knowledge and actual science, impose doctrines, and change the language to control, direct, and manipulate the people. It is necessary to use the police powers of the federal government against your opponents, real and perceived, parents, pro-lifers, peaceful protesters, the political opposition, a former president of the United States. It is necessary that the media be compliant with your means and your ends, helping to brainwash the public, reward compliance with fawning coverage, and smear and libel those who dissent or resist. And of course, it is necessary to dismantle the nuclear family by using government schools controlled by the Democrat Party through their union bosses to promote racism, sexuality, perversion, and to prevent parents from participating in raising their children. It is necessary to dumb down the children to ensure that they are not smart and their test scores are low, so you have a more malleable and compliant future generation. It is necessary to dismantle American history, which is exactly what's being done. You lie about the founding. You shred the Declaration and the Constitution. You eviscerate the founders. You rewrite history by substituting 1776 with 1619. You replace real history books with racist propaganda, and especially in school libraries, with sexually explicit pornography. You pull down the monuments. You expunge history. You destroy the
monstrous monthly fees, shocking overdraft charges, and agonizing ATM fees.
destroy the homes of the legacies of Jefferson, the author of the Declaration, and Madison, the main figure behind the Constitution. It is necessary to hollow out the military with wokeism and vaccine mandates, to crush local law enforcement and centralize police powers at the FBI, the American Stasi, and in the Department of Justice. It is necessary to unleash anarchy and lawlessness in our cities and neighborhoods, to cause people to be upset with the existing society and the status quo, and to want revolutionary change. It is necessary to destroy national sovereignty with open borders, create chaos on our southern border, sex trade, violence, fentanyl, drug cartels, chaos and anarchy. This is how you destroy a country from within. This is the issue before us on the election. Every single problem we face that's of a significant magnitude to our very existence as a free and prosperous people, as a sovereign nation, is being created by one party and only one party, the Democrat Party. And of course, the Democrat Party has its supporters, mainly the media, the New York Times. We've talked about the history of the New York Times. The New York Times supports this sort of thing. After all, the New York Times is behind the 1619 Project. The New York Times lied to the American people repeatedly on behalf of Joseph Stalin through its correspondent in Moscow. The New York Times covered up the Holocaust and lied about the Third Reich because they were asked to by Franklin Roosevelt, and because the owners of the newspaper were concerned that people would be critical of the New York Times. And so it has, and as chief correspondent in Berlin, a man who sympathized with the Nazis. The New York Times brought us Castro, who had been defeated. It was in the jungles of Cuba with about 20 so-called guerrillas. The New York Times breathed life into his revolution. The people of Cuba have suffered ever since. And to this day, the New York Times is caught time and time again with hiring anti-Semites who despise the state of Israel and Jews generally. But even more, let's look at the Democrat Party's history again. The Democrat Party was the party of Confederacy. The president of the Confederacy, Jefferson Davis, was a Democrat. The generals were Democrats. The KKK was spawned out of the Confederacy and embraced by the Democrat Party. It was embraced by the Democrat Party to oppose reconciliation, and that's what they did. It took a Republican president, Grant, to send the U.S. Army down there to wipe them out. But then when the Democrats won the House, Grant didn't have the authority to use the Army again, and the Klan prospered. Segregation, Plessy versus Ferguson, in the latter part of the 19th century. A Supreme Court gone rogue again. Again, the Democrat Party, pushing segregation for another 100 years after the Civil War. And so the Supreme Court stepped in again with Brown versus Board of Education. Separate but equal is not equal. Another decision that was intended to do what? Stop the Democrats from being racist and discriminatory against blacks. The 1964 Civil Rights Act, the 1965 Civil Rights Act, they were passed to do what? To stop again a large number of Democrats from stopping blacks from voting, or stopping the implementation of the Civil War amendments. Then we have Woodrow Wilson, one of the earliest and leading so-called progressives, aka American Marxists. He was a flat-out racist. What did he do? He resegregated the civil service. What else did he do? Everything possible to put down blacks and to prevent them from achieving. He embraced eugenics, as did his party, as did Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, another appendage of the Democrat Party. Now, they not only wanted to wipe out what they called idiots and morons and so forth, but they were targeting black people. Let's jump to Franklin Roosevelt, right? Great guy, right? Not so great. The propaganda from the Democrat media has protected this man, has immunized this man from many of his imperfections, which are significant. Number one, on more than one occasion, there were efforts in Congress to pass a federal anti-lynching act because blacks were still being lynched in the South, mostly by Democrats. FDR wouldn't support it, so it never passed under FDR. It even came up again in 1940, and FDR wanted to win an unprecedented third term, so he squelched it. His first appointment to the U.S. Supreme Court, Hugo Black, had been a lawyer for the Klan. A lawyer for the Klan in Alabama. What else? The New Deal, Mark. Look at all these great programs that were passed. You know, many of these programs were passed to try and address what the Democrats have done to minorities into this country previously. But when you look at the Federal Housing Authority, the FHA, which was one of the first New Deal programs passed, as I mentioned last time, that's where we get redlining from. Why? Because they were directed not to give home loans to blacks, to neighborhoods in which blacks predominated, or the neighborhoods around them. And what the FHA would do is they would color those neighborhoods in red. And that's where you get the phrase redlining from. What about Lyndon Johnson, Mark? We have to admit that he was a strong proponent of the 1964 and 65 Civil Rights Act. But even his greatest biographers, including Robert Caro and others, have said, while he led on civil rights, he remained a racist. He did remain a racist. The things he said that were caught on audio, the things he said over and over and over and over and over again, make it abundantly clear. Not until 1957, and he was in Congress a long time, did he ever support any civil rights legislation, because he decided he wanted to run for president at some point. Now, why am I telling you all this? The country's in decline, not because the American people want it, with massive inflation, with the dollar being
as a parent, it really breaks my heart to see Jack struggle with autism. But the video
being destroyed, with the borders wide open, with massive crime taking place in our streets, disrespect for police, the undermining of the United States military, inflation, economic conditions through the roof. These are all decisions that have been imposed by the Democrat Party, not foreign powers, not Russia, not Ukraine, not Saudi Arabia, but Joe Biden and the Democrats. If you want to save the country, if you want to begin the process, we hope, of reversing course, if you want to improve your lives, if you want to protect your family, whatever you do, don't vote Democrat. Ted Cruz has been warning about the corruption of our justice system. Ted Cruz is having to deal with it as a member of the United States Senate. He's just written a book, Justice Corrupted, How the Left Weaponized Our Legal System. Now, I want you to understand, this book is about as up-to-date as any book can be about what's happening to our country under Merrick Garland, the FBI, and the Democrats, and what they're doing to President Trump, to our parents, to January 6th peaceful protesters. So Ted Cruz, first of all, congratulations. Takes a couple of months to publish a book, but you're right on top of this. Why did you write this book, and what is it at its core that is concerning you?
Well, unfortunately, under the Democrats, they've turned the Department of Justice, they've turned the FBI, they've turned the intelligence community into political enforcers in a way that has never happened in the history of our country. You and I are both alums of DOJ. We both revere a Department of Justice that is fair, that is impartial, and the degree to which under Joe Biden, this department has been weaponized, that the deep state has taken over. It is dangerous, and it is a fundamental threat to our liberty. The book starts off with Loudoun County. Loudoun County, where a 14-year-old girl in the Loudoun County Public Schools was sexually assaulted in the bathroom by a boy wearing a skirt. And the school district covered it up. They insisted it didn't happen. They insisted this never happened. In fact, what the school district did, they transferred that predator to another school where he sexually assaulted another girl. And the school district refused to involve law enforcement. The parents, the dad, went to the school board and said, my daughter was raped at school. And he sat there and listened to the school board lie to him and insist that never happens. No boy wearing a skirt commits sexual assault. And instead of arresting the sexual predator, the school board arrested the dad, threw him to the ground, put him on handcuffs, arrested him. We saw this happen. What followed, though, is the National Association of School Boards sent a letter to Joe Biden asking the Department of Justice to go after not predators in schools that are hurting our kids, but to go after parents, to go after moms and dads. And 5 days later, Merrick Garland moved with laser speed. He wrote a memo directing the FBI, target parents, target moms and dads. The National Association of School Boards had said, treat them like domestic terrorists using the Patriot Act. And I'll tell you, I had Merrick Garland in front of the Judiciary Committee questioning him on it. He had done no work. He had no due diligence. I asked him in the letter, all right, how many instances are cited in this letter? I don't know. There were 20. How many of them were violent? He didn't know. He didn't care. And right now today, the DOJ and the FBI, they're interviewing moms and dads. They're treating the FBI as the political enforcers of the Democrats.
Ladies and gentlemen, the book is Justice Corrupted, How the Left Weaponized Our Legal System, which they certainly have done. Now, let's hone in briefly on Mar-a-Lago. You know, I say these so-called former federal prosecutors and legal analysts. You start with that warrant. That warrant was outrageous. It was so broad.
Yeah.
And then you move into breaking into Donald Trump's home. And the latest leak from the FBI and the Justice Department is he moved documents. He moved documents from one room to his office. I don't believe a subpoena prevents you from doing that, by the way. And so they think they have an obstruction case. So what do you make of this and all the leaks?
In 230 years of our nation's history, this has never happened. We've never seen the Department of Justice raid the home of a former president. It's being done by a successor of the opposing political party. It's being done because they want to attack Donald Trump. And this was a fishing expedition. Every former president has taken documents from his administration. Barack Obama did that. Bill Clinton did that. George W. Bush did that. This is an instance where the Biden administration is looking to gain political advantage. And one of the things that the book Justice Corrupted talks about, it starts off with Richard Nixon, because Richard Nixon tried to do this, tried to use DOJ and the FBI and the IRS to target his political enemies. By and large, the system worked. They resisted and said no. Well, what Richard Nixon tried to do, Barack Obama succeeded in doing, and now under Joe Biden it is metastasized, where the institutional resistance of DOJ and the FBI has been worn down. They put hard partisans in the senior career levels at those institutions, and they now view themselves as the jackbooted thugs for the DNC. And that's not what the Department of Justice is supposed to be. That's not what the FBI is supposed to be.
Amen. And last time I checked, if you're going to investigate a potential candidate for president of the other party, you better have a special counsel or somebody independent, not the president's hand-picked lapdog. The book is Justice Corrupted, How the Left Weaponized Our Legal System. When we come back, Ted Cruz, I want to ask you about January 6th and several other issues.
I'm Christina Coleman in New York. No to Donald Trump. The House committee investigating the January 6th Capitol riots will not allow the former president to answer questions from the panel on live television. Trump was subpoenaed last week. He's reportedly told associates he might comply if allowed to testify live. But the committee's vice chair, Congresswoman Liz Cheney, says that could turn Trump's testimony into what she describes as a circus. In the UK, former Prime Minister Boris Johnson is pulling out of the running to reclaim his old job. Johnson made that decision after talking with several Conservative Party lawmakers. He quit his post 3 months ago amid scandal. His replacement, Liz Truss, resigned Thursday after just 6 weeks in office. I'm Christina Coleman, now back to life.
Welcome back, America. Justice Corrupted, How the Left Weaponized Our Legal System. This book couldn't be more important than it is today. Ted Cruz, it's out on Tuesday. You can get your copy at Amazon.com immediately, and it'll show up at your steps. It's very important to read this before the election, America. What about January 6th? What do you make of how people are being prosecuted? They don't seem to be segregating the people who are nonviolent from the people who are violent, and overall they seem to be treated much differently than leftists who create all kinds of mayhem.
Yeah. Well, you're exactly right, Mark, and that's a big topic of this book. And in fact, this book is the first inside account of what happened on January 6th. And so I take the reader through the events of the 2020 election leading up to January 6th. I take them through the evidence of election fraud and voter fraud in November 2020, which the Democrats and the corporate media insist doesn't exist. I walk them through the litigation, all the different cases that went on, and I walk them through my being asked by the lawyers in the Pennsylvania case if the Supreme Court took that case for me to argue that case. I said yes, I would be happy to. I walk in the book through President Trump asking me with the Texas case at the Supreme Court, if the Supreme Court took the Texas case, if I would argue that, and I told President Trump I'd be happy to. I walked them through that day on January 6th, where in the days beforehand, I worked to assemble a coalition of 11 senators to stand up and object and to demand an election commission and to examine the evidence of voter fraud. I walked through trying to keep that coalition together, standing up and objecting, and then I walked through the riot that happened, working to try to keep those senators together while some senators were getting wobbly, and I walked them through the whole narrative to understand what happened. So if you're at home talking to people about January 6th, the left uses wildly politicized terms like insurrection, which is complete political garbage. Anyone who uses that word is engaged in partisan spin. I walked through what happened that day, and the contrast, and your question was exactly right. What the Biden DOJ has done is it's used the actions of a handful of people on that day who committed acts of violence. And let me be clear. Anyone who commits an act of violence should be prosecuted. If you assault a police officer, you should go to jail for a long time. That's true whether I agree with you or disagree with you, whether you're right wing or left wing. If you assault a cop, you're going to jail. What the Biden DOJ has done is it's used the violent acts of the few to target and smear the tens of thousands of peaceful protesters who were in Washington on January 6th, and more fundamentally, the tens of millions of conservatives and Trump voters across this country. And the double standard is ridiculous. At the same time, they ignore the Black Lives Matter and Antifa rioters who firebombed police cars, who looted homes, who murdered police officers, who committed horrific crimes. Kamala Harris, the sitting vice president, bailed out of jail violent protesters who were engaged in Black Lives Matter and Antifa protests. And I ask in the book questions like, who is Ray Epps? Why are the January 6th prisoners treated differently than other prisoners? Why are so many in solitary confinement? All of these are questions that this DOJ, were it fair, were it impartial, would be willing to answer. But they simply stonewall. And you want to know what the stakes of this election are? The stakes of this election are the rule of law. You and I both revere the Constitution and the rule of law. Why do we have prosperity in America where much of the developing world doesn't? Because we've had the rule of law, because our judicial system is not just a political weapon to persecute the enemies of the president. Well, under Barack Obama and now Joe Biden, that is what it's becoming, and that is extraordinarily dangerous.
The book is Justice Corrupted, How the Left Weaponized.
At Warren Chat, we're more than machines and horsepower. We're people who care.
Weaponized our legal system, very, very important book. What would you say about law enforcement generally in this country? I see a distinction between local law enforcement and what's happened to the FBI.
Well, listen, police officers across this country are heroes, and they're feeling demoralized and undermined by Democrats and the radicals in this party. One of the things I talk about is how President Biden is nominated, and every Democrat has voted to confirm not one, not two, but three of the leading proponents of abolishing and defunding the police to senior positions at the Department of Justice. Not only that, I talk about George Soros prosecutors, a really dangerous phenomenon where Soros has put millions in terms of electing radicals who let violent criminals go. I talk about, for example, the Waukesha Christmas parade murderer, that mass murderer who drove his SUV into the crowd, murdering children, murdering little old ladies. He had gone in and out with a left-wing George Soros prosecutor who kept letting him go. That is happening across this country, and it is radicalized. It is dangerous, and I try to connect it to this is a direct threat. You know, you talk about Marxist a lot. This book goes into critical race theory and Ketanji Brown Jackson. I was at Harvard Law School with Ketanji Brown Jackson. I bring readers in to the origins of critical race theory, how it is explicitly Marxist. And the Soros prosecutors are also explicitly Marxist. They come in and say, one of the ways to undermine our criminal justice system is take over the role of the prosecutor and simply refuse to lock up criminals. And that danger is profound. Listen, you and I, neither one of us want to see a Republican Department of Justice. We don't want to see a Democrat Department of Justice. We want to see a Department of Justice and an FBI that follows the law fairly and impartially. This book walks through Crossfire Hurricane and how the Obama DOJ and the intelligence community targeted Donald Trump, fabricated documents, engaged in an absolute corrupt persecution with the Hillary Clinton party. And let me say this finally. Last time I went on your show was my last book, One Vote Away. We went on the show, One Vote Away, shot to #1 on the... This book, as it's coming out, I'm hopeful we'll see the same thing. And I got to say, this DOJ is exercising every day the abuse of power that we're talking about. This book explains why, and it explains why this election in November matters so much.
Superb. It's a great book, folks. Justice Corrupted, How the Left Weaponized Our Legal System. I encourage you to go to Amazon.com, any major bookstore. Ted, thank you, my friend. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Mark.
We'll be right back.
I'm Christina Coleman in New York. No to Donald Trump. The House committee investigating the January 6th Capitol riots will not allow the former president to answer questions from the panel on live television. Trump was subpoenaed last week. He's reportedly told us so. Associates he might comply if allowed to testify live. With the committee's vice chair, Congresswoman Liz Cheney says that could turn Trump's testimony into what she describes as a circus. In the UK, former Prime Minister Boris Johnson is pulling out of the running to reclaim his old job. Johnson made that
system. This book couldn't be more important than it is today. Ted Cruz, it's out on Tuesday. You can get your copy at Amazon.com immediately, and it'll show up at your steps. Very important to read this before the election, America. What about January 6th? What do you make of how people are being prosecuted? They don't seem to be segregating the people who are nonviolent from the people who are violent, and overall, they seem to be treated much differently than leftists who create all kinds of mayhem.
Yeah. Well, you're exactly right, Mark, and that's a big topic of this book. And in fact, this book is the first inside account of what happened on January 6th. And so I take the reader through the events of the 2020 election leading up to January 6th. I take them through the evidence of election fraud and voter fraud in November 2020, which the Democrats and the corporate media insist doesn't exist. I walk them through the litigation, all the different cases that went on, and I walk them through my being asked by the lawyers in the Pennsylvania case if the Supreme Court took that case for me to argue that case. I said yes, I would be happy to. I walk in the book through President Trump asking me with the Texas case at the Supreme Court if the Supreme Court took the Texas case, if I would argue that, and I told President Trump I'd be happy to. I walked them through that day on January 6th, where in the days beforehand, I worked to assemble a coalition of 11 senators to stand up and object and to demand an election commission and to examine the evidence of voter fraud. I walked through trying to keep that coalition together, standing up and objecting. And then I walked through the riot that happened, working to try to keep those senators together while some senators were getting wobbly. And I walked them through the whole narrative to understand what happened. So if you're at home talking to people about January 6th, the left uses wildly politicized terms like insurrection, which is complete political garbage. Anyone who uses that word is engaged in partisan spin. I walked through what happened that day, and the contrast, and your question was exactly right. What the Biden DOJ has done is it's used the actions of a handful of people on that day who committed acts of violence. And let me be clear, anyone who commits an act of violence should be prosecuted. If you assault a police officer, you should go to jail for a long time. That's true whether I agree with you or disagree with you, whether you're right-wing or left-wing. If you assault a cop, you're going to jail. What the Biden DOJ has done is it's used the violent acts of the few to target and smear the tens of thousands of peaceful protesters who were in Washington on January 6th, and more fundamentally, the tens of millions of conservatives and Trump voters across this country. And the
All right, there's one more thing I wanted to put on tonight that I seen this morning. Let me go back and find it. Got one more thing, guys, that I thought was pretty interesting this morning. Let me find her. Here she is right here. I like this girl on Sunday mornings.
If you have psoriatic arthritis, Enbrel helps relieve joint pain and helps skin get clearer. So you can say, I'm in. And
she tells it
GOP
like it is.
Plans for a red wave in the upcoming midterm elections now just 2 weeks away. Bad policy, including defund the police, wide open borders, out of
This is from this morning, guys.
control spending have all resulted in spikes in crime across the country, illicit narcotics coming in and poisoning Americans, and inflation at 40-year highs, among other fires to put out. It is now expected to take several years to turn around the results of the Democrats' bad policies in the last 2 years. My first guest this morning is leading his Senate race in Wisconsin and will be the chairman of the subcommittee on investigations if the GOP wins the midterms, with a continuing investigation into Hunter Biden and the Biden family influence peddling, as well as into the FBI's role in allowing it. Joining me right now is Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson. Senator, thanks very much for joining me. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Maria.
I want to get your take on how the race is going for you and then ask you about the investigations that you are pursuing. What would you say are the most important issues for Wisconsin voters, and why do you think you've now taken the lead?
Well, first of all, this is Wisconsin, so these are always going to be very close races, so I'm taking nothing for granted. I mean, to the extent that the race has turned to our advantage, I would say it's because we finally been able to get out the truth about my opponent. He's a radical leftist. He supported defund the police movement. He's helped dispirit our police and our law enforcement. He thinks the founding of America was awful. But we've got a couple weeks left here. I'll still need the resources to convey the truth, ronjohnsonsenate.com. But you know, again, the issues really are inflation. A dollar you held at the start of the Biden administration is now worth only 88.3 cents. If you had a nest egg of $100,000 as a senior on a fixed income, it's only worth $88,300 before the devaluation of the market caused by Biden's recession. Record gasoline prices, skyrocketing crime, a flood of deadly drugs because of the open borders. So, I mean, those are the main issues, but people are so concerned about just what's happening to our country. We're losing this culture, and it's all being lost because of the radical leftists in the Democrat Party, but also that have infiltrated just about every institution in this country.
Well, it's very discouraging, and then there's corruption on top of everything. You've been investigating the business dealings of Hunter Biden now for a few years, you and Senator Chuck Grassley. Did you know that Igor Danchenko was on the payroll of the FBI? Did you know that they had offered Christopher Steele $1 million to corroborate the debunked Steele dossier?
I did not know that, but we certainly found out that the FBI knew that the Steele dossier was tainted by Russian disinformation from Igor Danchenko, and then they put him on his payroll. So as corrupt as the Biden family is, and we've known this literally for years, the news media has, certainly Senator Grassley and I have, but what may be even more troubling is the corruption within federal law enforcement and inside a corrupt and complicit and dishonest media. If we had an unbiased media, an honest media, first of all, we wouldn't have the corruption inside of federal law enforcement because they'd be holding people accountable. They would have been screaming about being fed false information as resulting from the Russian collusion hoax. But they're not honest. They're complicit in all this, and they're covering up for the Democrats.
Well, it's not all the media, obviously. I've been covering this for many years now, as well as the Russia collusion live, as has Fox News. So there's that. But
no, Maria, that's absolutely. I'm talking about the bulk of the mainstream media. No, courageous reporters like you and John Solomon. There's certainly news outlets that have been reporting this, but it's been by and large ignored by big tech social media giants and the mainstream media.
No, that's right. It has been. I want to get your take on CEFC and when they first did a deal with Hunter Biden, because I saw the beginning of an email when it was 2016. And Joe Biden was a sitting vice president. So you have that big guy email in 2017 when they're working out the details and they say 10% equity held by H for the big guy. The earlier emails when they're just deciding to do a partnership together were in 2016, and Joe Biden was a sitting vice president. How long has this been going on, and what is the danger of accepting all of this money? You've identified more than millions that the Hunter Biden and Jim Biden and the entire family has taken in from Chinese officials. What is the impact of all of this now that we need Joe Biden to be tough on China in their stated goal of wanting to take over the United States as the #1 superpower?
Well, I think the influence peddling using the Biden name has literally gone on for decades. We certainly know that Hunter Biden joined the board of Burisma in 2015. That was corrupt. That was full of conflict of interest. So this has been going on for quite some time. And I think what the revelation, God bless the whistleblowers coming forward out of the FBI, people with integrity trying to restore credibility of the FBI. Now we know that they're sitting on a mountain of evidence. I think they're sitting on a mountain of evidence. We don't know if they're transferring that to U.S. Attorney Weiss. We do know from whistleblowers that he doesn't have the resources to do a proper investigation. But this should be troubling. It sounds like they were accruing funds for actions taken while Joe Biden was vice president to be paid off after he was no longer vice president. We don't have all the details, but it smells to high heaven.
What can you do about it, Senator? I know that you've got plans on continuing your investigation should you win and the GOP win the majority, but what do you want to tell viewers in terms of some accountability here?
Well, again, we need to uncover the corruption in federal law enforcement. They've been hiding this. They've been sitting on a mountain of evidence. We have a whistleblower said that once that laptop was made public, they had it back in December of 2019. But once it was made public, they were internally said, do not look at that Hunter Biden laptop. We're not going to impact an election again. So that needs to be exposed. I think we're going to have something like a church commission. And maybe a bicameral select committee. I mean, I'd love to help head something like that. But we need to expose the corruption in federal law enforcement. But then also we need to expose the complicity and corruption of the media as well. And that's very difficult to do because they have all the power. They hold all the cards.
Well, and why is that? Why? I mean, these are issues that I would imagine we all should agree on. Influence peddling is bad. Protecting America should be.
With Sumo Logic Continuous Intelligence Platform, we're empowering the people who power modern digital business, so they, in turn, can deliver trusted, world-class digital experience.
Should be #1. A wide open border is not a policy for immigration. So why is it? When did this happen? That there's been such support for some of these lies in the media.
Well, it really goes back to the 60s when our universities were taken over by radical leftists. So they control colleges of journalism. They're not cranking out journalists by and large anymore. They're cranking out advocates to the left. I mean, I feel it big time here in my race in Wisconsin. All the questions, whether it's in our debates or just in gangles on the street, come from the perspective of the left. They're trying to defeat me here. It's not been an easy task. But, one thing I do want to get out here before, our time runs out, if I am fortunate enough to win re-election, if we take control of these Congresses, we need to impose a discipline. We need to reinstate function in Congress. And that really starts with budgetary and appropriation function. We need to pass a budget early next year, and then we need to have that budget drive an appropriation process, get back to regular order. This is completely unacceptable. Passing CRs, kick the can down the road before Christmas, and drop a multi-thousand-page bill that's going to spend $1 trillion plus without anybody even looking at it. That is corruption. That is dysfunction. That has to change, and that's something that Republican leadership must commit to, restoring function back to Congress, both chambers.
And it seems like it happens over and over again, like clockwork. Senator, it's good to see you this morning. We'll be watching all of that. Thanks very much. Ron Johnson this morning in Wisconsin.
My intention to run again, and we have time to make that decision.
Dr. Biden is for it. Mr. President.
Dr. Biden thinks that, my wife thinks that we're doing something very important, and that I shouldn't walk away from it.
That was President Biden appearing to zone out during an interview this week, raising renewed questions regarding his cognitive abilities. It comes as Republicans have momentum on their side. Heading into the midterms, the latest Fox News power rankings show Republicans capturing 232 seats in the House, more than enough to secure the majority. Joining me right now is New York Congresswoman Claudia Tenney. She sits on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Congresswoman, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks very much for being here. What is your reaction to Joe Biden in that interview, also saying that he intends to run again, and the impact of this?
Well, this is really sad, but he reminds me of a Madame Tussauds wax figure. He comes out and they turn him on and he delivers talking points that are presented to him by his shadow government, the staff behind him. And he's really showing that he's not competent to do this most important job in our nation. And I joined on a letter with Congressman Ronnie Jackson about making him subject to a cognitive test. You know, this is serious stuff. We've got enemies around the world. You've been interviewing tremendous people about China, about what's happening in the war in Europe, which is unprecedented. We've got to start looking into whether Joe Biden is actually capable of being the president. I think he's not. I think we should consider all of these avenues.
So would the 25th Amendment, would impeachment be on the table then in the new Congress? Because it's not just the corruption that we talk about all the time, but now there are national security issues surrounding the possibility that he's unfit.
Yeah, actually, Maria, I agree with Senator Ron Johnson. I mean, we've got an issue with this president. Corruption is one. We're looking at a direct dereliction of duty on the southern border. We have laws in place that are deliberately, for political reasons, being avoided, which is why I don't think impeachment should be off the table for the southern border alone. I don't think it's political to impeach someone for imperiling the American people. When you see over 80 people on the terror watch list going into the country that we know of. Forget about the gotaways, which are over 600,000 now, and the fentanyl that is coming across the border and killing 300 young people a day. These are crimes against America, not to mention the fact that the taxpayers are paying for all of this, and we're paying the price with increased crime added to states like New York, where I'm from, where you see this continued crisis with crime everywhere I go, whether I'm doing a small business visit, a farm visit, all I hear about is a crime story. We have crime stories developing everywhere. This cashless bail system that Kathy Hochul refuses to talk about in New York State. We had a tragedy. A man was let out on bail. The next day, he shot and killed his wife in front of her children in a district near me. So these are real issues. And then, I mean, honestly, as my son is a Marine, I look at what happened in Afghanistan. The complete lack of necessity for what was happened, the just botched pull out of Afghanistan without keeping our service members in place. He's commander-in-chief. He's completely incapable of doing these jobs. I don't think impeachment would be political in this case. I think the American people are seeing it before their TV sets every single day that this man is not only corrupt, he's incompetent, and his family has been enriching themselves at the expense of the taxpayers for decades, and yet our legacy media, not people like you who do a fabulous job of pointing this out, are ignoring this. They're covering it up because they don't want this narrative out in this very, very important midterm election that we're facing.
It's very disturbing, and I think it is a dereliction of duty. Certainly when you look at the wide open border and this poisoning of Americans, and New Yorkers are feeling it. That's why we're seeing the polls in New York tighten for the governor's race. Look at Lee Zeldin closing in on Kathy Hochul, who has said she doesn't want to talk about cashless bail until after the election. What's most important, do you think, to the voters in New York right now? Because you're right about crime in New York City, and I guess it's being felt everywhere.
There is a power that will make a person bold. There is a power that will cause...
With some people connecting the dots to the gotaways and the illegal migrants coming in as well.
Well, as you've covered many times on this show, we've seen these late-night flights coming into New York State. We don't know where these people are going. We've got this beautiful sanctuary area in New York City that they're providing with a fortune in taxpayer money, but yet cashless bail has affected the entire state. This is a problem that the police are having with defund, demoralize the police, on top of the fact that they have no tools. The criminals are being emboldened. They get a little more courageous and committing more and more crimes because they're let out. We have no tools, and that's why you see Lee Zeldin surging in the polls. And we also have, interestingly enough, Michael Henry, who is challenging Letitia James, who I think is one of the most corrupt attorney generals we've had. Compare that to our past attorney generals, Eric Schneiderman, who left in disgrace, Elliot Spitzer, Andrew Cuomo. So you're seeing this tremendous surge with people recognizing one-party rule in Albany is hurting our state, and it's putting New Yorkers in jeopardy. I hear about it every day. It's inflation, it's the price of gas, and it's crime. People are very...
Well, the Chinese Communist Party concluded its People's Congress yesterday, where Xi Jinping was granted an unprecedented third term and anointed dictator for life, similar to Mao Zedong. One of his first public moves was to humiliate and take out his predecessor. China's former president, Hu Jintao, was physically escorted out of his seat and out of the closing ceremony, clearly against his own will. He seemed to resist and looked back at his seat while being escorted out. Joining me right now, live this morning, is Florida Congressman Michael Waltz. He sits on the House Armed Services Committee. Congressman, it's good to see you. Thanks very much for being here. I know you were just back from Asia. You went to Taiwan, Philippines, among other places. First, give us your reaction to what took place yesterday in Beijing.
Well, Maria, Xi has cemented his place as the 21st century emperor of China. He humiliated his predecessor. He has stacked the organs of power in China with his loyalists. He has centralized power with himself. He has eliminated term limits. So essentially, he is dictator for life now, all with a major step towards what he sees as his legacy, and that's returning China to become the global superpower, not a superpower, but the global superpower in line with ancient Chinese greatness. And to do that, he's told his military to rapidly modernize, to prepare for war by 2027. Their Navy is larger than ours. Their Space Force is launching more than we are. And he's told his economy to become self-sufficient, both technologically and from a manufacturing standpoint, so that they can resist any type of outside pressure. He has become the most powerful Chinese dictator since Mao.
Well, I know for sure that if the Communist Party of China is the #1 superpower, your kids and their kids and my kids and their kids and grandkids are not going to have the same opportunities that we had in a freedom-loving America as the #1 superpower. What does this mean for America?
Well, he sees all of this as an existential conflict with the West, and he is talking about in his speeches to prepare for the coming storm, that this is a life or death competition with Western liberal democracy versus what he says is socialism with Chinese characteristics. Every war game now, the United States takes massive losses to where I don't think we can, as American people, can take for granted anymore that we win. What do we do about it? Well, Maria, in a new Republican majority, we will have a select committee on China that will get at everything from they're buying up our farmland to infiltrating our universities to the amount of money that's pouring in from Wall Street, the fact that they own the Panama Canal now and ports around the world. Xi sees this as he is going to win economically way before there's any type of military conflict. And Maria, we have to wake up as a country to what the hell is going on and get our supply chains out of China and back to America. It's a national security critical issue.
Well, what is Joe Biden doing about it? I mean, you're just back from Taiwan. Are they expecting that the CCP is going to invade Taiwan? Open source reporting says they're going to be there within 18 months. Is Joe Biden doing anything about it?
You know, some things are moving in the right direction, Maria. The crackdown on American chip exports was a step in the right direction, but there's no sense of urgency, right? I mean, this is coming right around the corner. He, again, has told his military to be prepared to invade Taiwan by 27. So we're running out of time. And we certainly aren't doing anything about Wall Street, the NBA, our universities, and the infiltration that has happened in American society. That's where Biden has to make much bolder moves, and he's asleep at the switch, and many people can credibly argue that he's compromised.
Well, he still hasn't mentioned the origins of COVID-19. He hasn't mentioned, we don't have any evidence that he's actually pushed the CCP on why they covered up COVID and why we know that all of the evidence points to the Wuhan lab and COVID escaping from it.
That's right.
There's also, you know, he's depleting the Strategic National Petroleum Reserve and selling some oil to China.
Right.
And then there's Iran. Protesters continue to take to the streets across Iran against Ayatollah Khomeini and his brutal regime, following the death of a young woman who was in custody from the so-called morality police. She wasn't wearing her scarf right, according to them. So,
Can someone working alone solve all the world?
so they killed her. Your thoughts on this administration pursuing an Iran deal? Is the Iran deal dead at this point?
Yeah, Maria, if it's not dead, it's on life support. I mean, as badly, as desperately as the Biden administration wants this deal, where they just make concession after
You can
concession
go back
after
and watch it.
concession.
You can always
total
go back and
appeasement
watch the
strategy
commercial.
Between the Iranians openly trying to assassinate American officials, attacking journalists on American soil, now literally shooting.
Breaking news from our southern border. With just 16 days before the midterm elections, Biden's lax border policy, wide open border, is one of the pivotal issues that Democrats will have to answer for. And in a Friday night typical data dump, the Biden administration revealed that nearly 2.4 million migrants have crossed the southern border illegally for the fiscal year 2022. In Arizona, which has seen a sharp rise in drug trafficking as well as illegal border crossings, Kari Lake leads Democrat Katie Hobbs by almost 4 points in the race for governor. Joining me right now is Kari Lake, who has received the endorsement of Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin, Tulsi Gabbard, and President Donald J. Trump, just to name a few. Kari Lake, good morning to you. Thanks very much for being here.
Good morning. Thanks for having me, Maria.
I'd love you to assess what is taking place on the ground right now, what's most important to Arizona voters, because I want to get your take on the true impact to Arizona of this wide open border.
Maria, I just lost you. I don't hear you. I'm not sure if you can hear me, but the situation on the border, I can hear you, yeah. But I don't hear Maria.
Karen, can you hear me now?
Yes,
Karen?
I can hear you
Yes.
now.
I'm trying to get a sense of what the situation is on the ground for Arizona as a result of this wide open border.
Well, the situation is lawlessness. You saw some of the video. I just watched it that you played. It is a stream of people coming across. It is drug smugglers and human smugglers in control of our border. And the people in Arizona are tired of it. That's why we're ahead in the polls. They don't want Joe Biden taking control of our border. He's the one who destroyed a great border plan. And that's why they're supporting me, because when I become governor, we're going to take this issue seriously, and we're taking back control of our border starting on day one.
Katie Hobbs, your opponent, refuses to debate you. Why do you think that is? She's also apparently threatening to sue Cochise County if the supervisors vote to hand count the midterm election ballots. What's wrong with the hand count?
Exactly. What is she afraid of? Is she afraid it won't match with the electronic voting machine? I mean, I've called her incompetent because she is. She's only showed up for work 19 days in the last 6 months. We are already a week or so into early voting, and we've already had a bunch of mistakes, including 6,000 of the wrong ballots sent out to voters. We had problems in the primary race as well. She is incompetent in her role as Secretary of State, and people are concerned about how this election is being run right now. I think she should have recused herself, to be honest. To have her in control of this election while she's running for governor is absolutely is shocking and appalling. And the voters are actually on to what she's pushing. She's voted when she was in the Senate against everything that would have secured our border, including a border wall, a virtual border wall. She was voting against parents having the right to choose what school their kids go to. And she's opposed to funding the student rather than the system. This is a person who her entire life as a bureaucrat and a politician has voted against the people of Arizona. And that's why we're winning. That's why she can't even draw a crowd of 10 or 15 people in these days leading up to this election.
Carrie, Arizona took the step to put big shipping containers to cover. Now, officials in Washington, D.C., the Biden administration want those shipping containers removed because it is covering up the holes in the walls. Tell me about this. I find this stunning.
You know, it's just another example, Maria, where we're seeing that our federal government is siding with the cartels. They're siding with the traffickers. It's shocking. I support Governor Ducey in trying to fill these holes any way possible. I mean, obviously, I want to finish President Trump's wall, and we plan to do that when I'm governor. But in the short term, let's get something, a barrier of some sort, to cover these gaps where people are pouring in and where the drugs are pouring in. I'm glad the governor is fighting back. I continue to maintain that we will fight back every single day against Joe Biden and any Democrat lawfare attack on the people of Arizona as we try to secure our border.
Well, we're also seeing these spikes in crime, Carrie. I mean, murder, attacks, burglary, all up across the country as a result of cashless bail. What's happening in Arizona? And what about the gotaways? Do they find Arizona as their first stop once they enter through Texas?
Oh, crime is way up. Murder is higher. The murder rates in Tucson, Arizona, are the highest they've ever been. The streets in some areas look like a zombie apocalypse with the homeless crisis that's being fueled by the fentanyl pouring across. We had to issue Narcan to an infant, 2 infants in the last month in the Phoenix area. This is how bad the crisis is here in Phoenix. And it's all being fueled by a wide open border with people pouring across who we don't know who they are. 1 million gotaways have come through, a vast majority of them coming through the Tucson sector, which is a large swath of our border. And we've talked about this before, Maria. The gotaways are the ones who don't want to be processed. They're not looking for asylum. They're looking to sneak in because they have serious criminal records. And these are the people that Joe Biden is allowing in this country right now by doing nothing on the border except handing it over to the cartels. This is why the states have to take back their power, show that they are sovereign, and protect their people and take back control on the border. I plan to do it. I'm hoping Texas will join in and other like-minded states. I know Governor Youngkin's.
Now, officials in Washington, D.C., the Biden administration want those shipping containers removed because it is covering up the holes in the walls. Tell me about this. I find this stunning.
You know, it's just another example, Maria, where we're seeing that our federal government is siding with the cartels. They're siding with the traffickers. It's shocking. I support Governor Ducey in trying to fill these holes any way possible. I mean, obviously, I want to finish President Trump's wall, and we plan to do that when I'm governor. But in the short term, let's get something, a barrier of some sort, to cover these gaps where people are pouring in and where the drugs are pouring in. I'm glad the governor is fighting back. I continue to maintain that we will fight back every single day against Joe Biden and any Democrat lawfare attack on the people of Arizona as we try to secure our border.
Well, we're also seeing these spikes in crime, Carrie. I mean, murder, attacks, burglary, all up across the country as a result of cashless bail. What's happening in Arizona? And what about the gotaways? Do they find Arizona as their first stop once they enter through Texas?
Oh, crime is way up. Murder is higher. The murder rates in Tucson, Arizona, are the highest they've ever been. The streets in some areas look like a zombie apocalypse with the homeless crisis that's being fueled by the fentanyl pouring across. We had to issue Narcan to an infant, 2 infants in the last month in the Phoenix area. This is how bad the crisis is here in Phoenix. And it's all being fueled by a wide open border with people pouring across who we don't know who they are. 1 million gotaways have come through, a vast majority of them coming through the Tucson sector, which is a large swath of our border. And we've talked about this before, Maria. The gotaways are the ones who don't want to be processed. They're not looking for asylum. They're looking to sneak in because they have serious criminal records. And these are the people that Joe Biden is allowing in this country right now by doing nothing on the border except handing it over to the cartels. This is why the states have to take back their power, show that they are sovereign, and protect their people and take back control on the border. I plan to do it. I'm hoping Texas will join in and other like-minded states. I know Governor Youngkin's.
Yeah, all right, guys, I got one more thing. Lady Becca, if you're still in here, go back, or anybody that wants to, go back and check the first of this, the Life, Liberty, and Levin. They talk a lot a bit about the J6 political prisoners, which I think needs to be addressed. Okay, get to bear with me 1 minute while I jump over to Fox Nation. Come on, slow thing. I'm using Hope's Wi-Fi. Come on. How is it? Oh, it's going to be like that. It's going to be like that, really? Wow. 2, 3, 4. Welcome to Redneck Studios, live from Tulsa, Oklahoma, where we deliver the news with Covered Wagon and Pony Express. Come on, you POS. There it is. Can't imagine how slow this is going to be if it took me that long to get here. I just gurred like a doggo. Yeah, I pet them dogs. Everybody pet those dogs if you have one, right, Flyer? It is what it is. It's going to take a minute, but so there's like this really weird thing right here, this Hunter Biden trial. Do you guys want to watch that, or do you want to watch the newest Tucker? Or we've got these guys. They're like, there's Tucker Carlson tonight. Friday, no, we don't want to. No. Yeah, point of sale. You keep looking at your bank account like I do, Cashew. I'm like, POS, yeah. What's this? Okay, so we'll see what Tucker's got going on. So in demand, I've already posted that. The China takeover in Brazil. That's worth a watch, but it's not really new. What I want to. Hang on. Not the new right. Okay, here we go. Well, we want to watch the Vax tyranny thing. The Nixon files, no. Okay, here. Did I already do the ammo thing? I can't remember. Yeah, but I'm telling you guys, do not get the T-Mobile Wi-Fi. That's all I'm saying. I guess it's all right, though, if you want to slow down. If you're living too fast in the fast lane, get T-Mobile. I guarantee you'll be driving on the sidewalk. Not Mar-a-Lago. No. Want to watch the UFOs? No. So, okay, we're going to do, no, I don't want to do recession. Free from Big Pharma. Okay. Yeah, slow down, America. Calm down. I'm glad you guys joined tonight. Sunday night's a slow night everywhere, so I figured it's a good night. Hey, silly. No, Paul, Flyer and I wasn't talking to you. I was talking, there's actually someone else that has the name Silly. So really was
Welcome
talking
to
to
Tucker
the
Carlson
choir.
today. So back in December of last year, December 2021, we had a guest on the show called Ingo Rademacher, who was, of all things, an actor on the show General Hospital, the soap opera. And we had a long, very interesting conversation with him, and it turns out, unlike a lot of actors, Ingo Rademacher is really smart and really principled. And he got into a dispute with his employer, ABC News, over the vaccine. ABC, or not ABC News, the broader ABC. And they were making the vaccine compulsory, mandatory for people who work there. And his point was, I mean...
See, now, I actually thought Wizzy would be interested in this. If you all get a chance, holler at him.
Great health, really interested in health, confident I'm going to be okay, confident I'm not going to spread this virus to others, and I'd rather not get the vaccine. And he had to leave his job after like 20 years. Sure. It's part of the conversation we had with Ingo Rademacher.
I never thought that I would do this, and I also never thought that I would ever be in a lost.
All right, if it's going to keep doing this, I'm going to jump over to something else. For some reason, I have trouble with Fox Nation.
A situation like that. I'm not that kind of person. But I can't turn a blind eye.
Yeah, okay, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. Not gonna do it. All right, that may be it, guys. I don't know. Might be it. Yeah, I already watched that. Might be it. Yep. Nothing to see here. I don't know. You guys want to watch this Trey Gowdy? No, I don't care about Trey Gowdy. Big Saturday show. Right? I don't know if everybody gets Fox or not. Let's give it a chance, see what they say. Hey, Edith.
Come here.
I got a feeling we all just watch anything at this point, right?
So why are the Democratic mayor and governor now saying they're going to do something about rising crime? Nice to know.
Lisa? Biden's border crisis hits a new record. More than 2.3 million migrants stopped while trying to cross the southern border illegally. And those are only the ones the border agents know about. And Sean?
Julie, first, climate activists came for your SUV, then it was eating meat. Now the liberal media claims our dogs are responsible for global warming. Right.
Brother. All right, but first, President Biden trying to put a spin on the bad economy. He is doubling down on his insistence that Republicans will make inflation worse if they take control of Washington in the midterm elections.
The Republicans have made it clear. First thing they want to do is most of them voted against the bill to reconstruct America through the infrastructure bill, highways, roads. You know, they all voted against, to a person, voted against the Inflation Reduction Act, which provides for environmental security and safety. They don't have a platform other than tear down what I've been able to do, we've been able to do. And I don't know what they're for.
Well, not only are Democrats joining him and touting Biden's economic policies, Nancy Pelosi says when people start talking about inflation, Democrats should change the subject.
We feel proud of what we've done. We feel proud of the president to help America's working families to lower their cost and in doing so to reduce the deficit. People talk about inflation as I heard in there. We have to change that subject.
Okay. The problem for Democrats, though, is that inflation is at the top of the minds of voters. And Republicans say Biden's spending sprees, well, they've just made it worse.
The fact of the matter is his policies have made our economy worse. We've brought in over $4 trillion into the federal government's coffers last year. We've spent nearly $7 trillion. That is literally what causes inflation. Right now, we've got a Democratic Congress that rubber stamps everything Joe Biden does. And he wants more spending. That results in inflation.
I mean, talk about the disconnect. I mean, first of all, Nancy Pelosi says, stop talking about inflation. Hello, that's what everyone is talking about. That's all anyone is talking about, inflation and the economy. What is she thinking?
Well, I can't say. I mean, she's crazy. I mean, look, Americans are paying $445 more per month. But have you guys seen Billy Madison? Like, when I hear Joe Biden talk, it reminds me of that scene with the principal where he's saying, you know, we're nowhere in your rambling, incoherent thought. We're even close to a rational thought. And then he's like, we're all dumber for having listened to it. May God have mercy on your soul. That's how I feel every time Joe Biden talks. Look, there's a reason why I did that stickers on every gas station around America, why Americans are cheering Let's Go Brandon at sporting events around the country. We have all seen the destruction under this man. They cannot hide from this. The media always cover for them. The left always lies, but they can't lie on this one because Americans are seeing it. They're feeling it every time they go to fill up when they're paying their electricity bill. So Americans are onto it, and the line's just not going to work this time.
The media does try to cover it up. Not all media, but a lot of media. The mainstream media, that is. Watch this interview on MSNBC with Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence, interviewed by Ali Velshi.
It has been transformed into something that Republicans, in particular running for Congress, are blaming Joe Biden and Democrats for specifically, when in fact there is no economic evidence or mathematical evidence or any other kind of evidence that that's actually true.
It's absolutely not true. Isn't it interesting with everything else that's going on in the world? That is the sole issue that the Republicans can rest on.
I don't know if you're shaking your head because I actually can't believe what I just heard. I have to actually read it for myself. He actually just said, when in fact there was no economic evidence or mathematical evidence. Have you gone shopping yet or recently or filled up your gas tank, Sean, or I don't know, just done anything that every American does daily?
In the last 2 years, the 2 years of Joe Biden's presidency, Democrats have spent an additional $5 trillion. That's outside of the military and Social Security and every agency of government, an extra $5 trillion. So massive amounts of money have poured into the economy that has caused inflation. But I look at Nancy Pelosi. I know they've legalized drugs in San Francisco. I wonder if she's smoking crack, because everyone, as to your point, is talking about inflation. You can't just change the topic because that is the topic. And if you're a Republican, you're like, listen, we got rid of bloodletting in the 19th century to fix people's health problems. Your policies are a boot on the neck of the American people. Republicans are in a fight to make you take your boot off their neck and let them live freely. Let things go back to a free enterprise system, less government.
The United Spot.
Yes, they're going to be opposed to the agenda because it's hurting people and their constituents.
Yeah, so.
The clip you played.
Getting that from YouTube.
You remember him from the summer of 2020. He was the guy that was in Wisconsin saying that actually these protests are mostly peaceful. And behind him, it looked like the Nakatomi Plaza at the end of Die Hard, right? Just completely on fire. So this is the journalist.
Ladies and gentlemen, the house drinker. Stimulus checks? Yeah, what's the question? Well, the people want to know where they are and why it took so long. The people don't know what they want, okay? I'm in charge. I make the rules, all right? The people aren't even working. What do they need money for, okay? I work. That's why I get paid. What's it like to be house drinker? You know, Mom always says that life is like a bottle of vodka. You just never know how much you're gonna drink. Walk me through one of your days as drinker of the house. Well, I like to follow the Democratic playbook. Democratic playbook? Yes, the Democratic playbook. You know, it's like Ivan is the problem, and the press supports me. What? You know, I refer to everything as peaceful and calm. And I make sure to go on camera and praise the criminals, and the press praises me. That's your playbook? Yes, and you know, if all else fails, and I just can't keep any order, I just blame Trump. You blame it on Trump? Yes, I cannot emphasize this enough, all right? Always blame Trump, all right? It always works. Wow, you're wearing a lot of makeup. What's your monthly Botox bill? I don't hit Botox. I use cake frosting. Cake frosting? Yeah, it saves money and it's delicious. So this is where it all went down, huh? Yep, this is where it all went down. I wasn't scared, though. You weren't scared? No, I wasn't scared. The Capitol Police said, "Come on, Nancy." And I said, "Yeah, I want to stay and fight." You wanted to fight? Yeah, I wanted to fight. I'm a green belt motherfucker. You're a green belt? Stutter. I'm a green belt motherfucker. Can you teach me kung fu? I will teach you kung fu. You will? Silence. Show me paint the fence. Paint the fence? Show me sand the floor. Sand the floor? Show me wax on, wax off. Wax on, wax off? Fear does not exist in this show, does it? What? Strike first, strike hard, no mercy. Can you tell me what happened in your office? Well, these deranged, unhinged, and dangerous Trump supporters, they took my laptop and then they took a poop on my desk. They took a poop on your desk? Yeah, they took a poop on my desk. On my goddamn desk. That's terrible. Yeah, well, first they spray painted my garage and peed on my poinsettias. And now they're stealing my laptops and crapping on my desk. So, House Drinker, Yeah. what's next? Well, I plan to draft legislation classifying MAGA rallies as domestic terrorist activity. And the taxpayers are okay with this? Of course they are. These Trump supporters are dangerous. And you have proof of it. Listen to me, okay?
All right, Alexandria, it's the end of the line. You're telling me, hurry up, Alexandria. I'm trying. I'm just so nervous. I've never lived on my own before. Is this everything you own? Yeah, pretty much. All I've got is my bicycle, my laundry basket, a bunch of wine, and some microwave popcorn. Jeez, how old are you? I know, right? You should have stayed in the Bronx. How did you know I was from the Bronx? Because I'm from the Bronx. Oh my gosh, that's so weird. Don't talk to her, Alexandria. She's senile. Oh, she's a fisherman, huh? Oh, great. So whatever this is broken. That's a sink, Alexandria. A sink? You don't know what a sink is? No. And what's this hole down there? Is that like for old shoelaces? Just go downstairs and see if the maintenance worker can fix it. Okay. Hello? Trick or treat? Oh, hi. Are you the maintenance worker? I'm looking for the maintenance worker. The magic water maker is broken? Are you talking about your sink? That's what it's called. My sink is broken. Can you fix it? After. After? After. Like afternoon? After. After what? After. Okay. I'm a little busy right now. Okay. It's after. Let's fix your sink. Oh, great. What's that book there? Are you studying for Congress? Yeah, I'm in Congress. You? You're in Congress? I know, right? I was a waitress last year and now I'm in Congress. Wow, that's crazy. So have you ever heard about Congress? Yeah, I've heard about Congress. Do you have any advice for me? I'm a little nervous. You know, I really don't. Okay, I understand. What's wrong, Alexandria? I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. Are you quitting already? No, but all I've ever known is We need to get you some help. Well, the maintenance worker knows about Congress. Maybe I can convince her to help me. I need your help. Can you help me? You need me to train you? Train me? Like run a train? No. Oh my gosh. Okay, to train you is to teach you about Congress. So can you please help me? If I help you, you have to do it my way, okay? No exception. It's a deal. Okay, first lesson in Congress. Anyone that can catch their own spit with chopsticks can accomplish anything. Have you ever caught your own spit? Yes, several times. Wow. I'll never be able to catch my own spit. Yeah, I need you to wax on and wax off. Ha, that sounds like every boy I've ever dated. Listen to me. Show me. Wax on, wax off. Wax on, wax off. Wax on, wax off. Why are you so mean to me? This is Congress. You gotta be tough. Now, wax on, wax off. Now, I need you to sand your floor. This is hard work. I'm not used to this. This is really nice, baby. Now, sand your floor. Now, I want you to paint my fence. Wax on, wax off, sand the floor. Now I'm painting your fence. I feel like I'm just doing all your chores. You are doing my chores. Welcome to the real world, baby. What do we learn here? Smear first, smear hard, no mercy. That's right. Democrats' position. Wow, where are we? This is the School of Congress and fake news. Is this another one of your students? Yes, Chuck. I've got a lot of fakes in this one. We'll see about that. No mercy, man. Here at the School of Congress and fake news, we smear first, smear hard, and have no mercy. Alexandra, repeat after me. Yeah! That's right. Okay. Yeah! Okay, Alexandra, son. You're ready for Congress. I'm the best around. Nothing's gonna ever keep me down. I'm the best around. Nothing's gonna ever keep me down.
Yeah. All right. I don't know, guys. I don't know. Try it one more time. I'm going to try it one more time. We don't give up here at Redneck Studios. We keep trying and keep dying every time. Damn it.
Previously on. My name is Doug Burns, and I'm playing the role of the attorney against Hunter Biden. My name is Randy Zelig, and I have the privilege.
I think I'll change it. I think I'll change it to Redneck Studios. Why not?
This is Judge Joe Brown, and we're here for the trial of Hunter Biden. Why was Hunter Biden doing all of this? Very simple, to monetize his last name. The proof here only shows that my client took all of that money and stuck it up his nose or put it into a crack pipe.
Hunter came into my shop on April 12th, 2019.
I could have walked into your shop and said, I'm Hunter Biden, and you wouldn't have known the difference. Your Honor, he did admit that it could be his laptop. Those were his words, correct? You've heard about disinformation, correct? And
I've heard a lot about it when it comes to this laptop.
And the Republicans have never used that excuse, have they? I didn't interrupt you, Mr. Burns. Please don't interrupt me. Plain and simple. He was being paid boatloads of money to provide that type of access to influence the government. The prosecution cannot come to you with a straight face and tell you that what was in that laptop came from Hunter Biden.
Please rise. Someone will escort you to the jury room.
He just thought, like, they just want to be my dad.
I have to disagree. Look, he says it right here. I brought you to the effing White House. I did everything you asked.
Now I get to use this thing one more time. This is Judge Joe Brown, and we're here for the trial of Hunter Biden. This is a mock trial. It is not a real proceeding. To be clear, Hunter Biden has not been implicated in or charged with any crimes arising from his activity, alleged activity. Of course, this is not a real trial. It is a mock trial. I will keep emphasizing that. We have taken procedural elements from a grand jury and a trial jury to create our own format, which we will use as a method of sorting through the questions and issues that have come to light over the last several years, and none of the substances we present comes from any actual grand jury or trial proceedings, but from the public record. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you will be examining two charges. First, did Mr. Hunter Biden violate the Foreign Agents Registration Act, also known as FARA? The FARA law requires registration with the Department of Justice of all persons engaged in domestic, political, or advocacy work on behalf of foreign interests, and a disclosure of their relationships, activities, and related financial compensation. And second, did he commit bribery? You, the jury, will not be asked to determine whether Mr. Biden is guilty or not guilty of any crime. Rather, you will be asked to deliberate and see if you can agree on whether or not there is probable cause to warrant further investigation. Mr. Burns will be playing the role of prosecutor, and the evidence that he will be showing you comes from the public record. I want to stress to everyone that Mr. Hunter Biden has not authorized this exercise. He is not participating in this trial in any fashion and has had no involvement in the preparations. Mr. Zellin, who will be playing the role of Mr. Biden's defense counsel, has had no knowledge of any exculpatory evidence that has not yet come to light, and he will be relying again exclusively on the publicly available material. Further, Mr. Zellin does not actually represent Mr. Hunter Biden. He is simply playing a role here. For this mock proceeding, we hired an outside firm to be objective in selecting the bunch of you from diverse backgrounds. That's all of you got here. Now I'm going to turn the floor over to Mr. Burns, who will give the prosecution's opening statement. Now, before he does that, please keep in mind that an opening statement is not evidence. It is one side's summary of the best elements of their case as a preview of what they plan to show to you and capture your attention. Both sides will have an opportunity to present an opening statement. Now, Mr. Burns, you, sir.
May it please the court, Mr. Zellin, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. As the judge explained, my name is Doug Burns, and I'm playing the role of the attorney against Hunter Biden in this mock trial, which the judge stressed over and over is not a real proceeding. It's a mock trial to determine whether there's probable cause to believe that further investigation is warranted on this question of whether or not Hunter Biden was A, required to register under a law called the Foreign Agents Registration Act, and B, did not do so, did not register, and C, engaged in advocacy work on behalf of various foreign countries. We are also arguing, ladies and gentlemen, that Hunter Biden engaged in a bribery scheme, exploiting his father's position. Bribery is soliciting and getting money in exchange for influencing the behavior and actions of public officials. And in that regard, obviously, the fact that his father was vice president for 8 years and then now president of the United States is a key component of all of that advocacy work on behalf of these governments, obviously. Because you're also going to see, you know, a number of photographs which demonstrate the different relationships. And then later on, you'll see other photographs about some of the activities that Hunter Biden was engaging in that really were inconsistent, quite honestly, with any kind of real legitimate business. So why don't we just look at a couple of photos for a minute. And these photos will give you, you know, a little bit of the context and the flavor, because you're going to see overtones throughout the proceeding that the president, then vice president, claiming I really had nothing to do with any of these people. I had no idea what my son was doing. And these photographs, you know, the old cliche, a photo's worth 1,000 words, while in fairness, a photograph doesn't necessarily demonstrate every single thing a person's doing, but it certainly gives you a context against the background of, oh, wait, I never met these people, I didn't know what they were doing. Okay, and you'll see that throughout the proceeding. Now, why was Hunter Biden doing all of this? Very simple, and that was to monetize his last name. Real simple English. Lawyers, a lot of times, you know, use fancy words and principles. I don't do that, okay? This man engaged in activity and took a lot of money into his pocket and his family members' pockets, monetizing off of his last name. So why don't we look quickly at an email that'll show you a little bit about this. We urgently need your advice on how you could use your influence, okay? That's critical. That gives you the background for what I'm saying, okay? Selling out, taking lots of money, and the people are saying, we want you to use your influence. Okay? Very simple, very direct, okay? Now, let's look at another email, and this is very, very important because you have the phrase, the big guy, okay? And the point is, we will demonstrate to you that the big guy is Joseph Robinette Biden, the President of the United States and then Vice President. And they literally spell it right out, and they say 10 held by H, by Hunter, for the big guy. Ladies and gentlemen, you will also hear evidence during this mock trial that Hunter Biden engaged in all kinds of very, very reckless behavior. Let's look at some photographs of that, if we might.
Objection, Your Honor. These photographs have no place in this proceeding at all, let alone in an opening statement.
Your objections have been noted, and we assume that materiality and relevance will be developed appropriately. So
Yes.
with that understanding, Mr. Burns, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Okay, so I'd like you to just take a quick look at those, and you'll see what I'm talking about. We are simply positing the rhetorical question, does that look like an individual who was engaged in serious, legitimate business activity? Later in the trial, I'll get a chance to get up in what we call the closing argument or the summation, and unlike just the roadmap as the judge described it, I'll have a chance to actually argue to you. This piece of evidence demonstrated that Hunter Biden engaged in all kinds of activity on behalf of foreign governments, never registered with the U.S. government. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Now, Mr. Zealot.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ladies and gentlemen, I would love to be 6'2" with a full head of hair. Some wishes, however, simply cannot be granted. My name is Randy Zellin, and I have the privilege of defending Hunter Biden in this mock trial. Being a drug addict, it's not a federal crime. Sleeping with prostitutes, it is not a federal crime. You may not agree with this kind of behavior. You may find it disgusting. But Hunter Biden is not on trial for his disgusting behavior. He's not on trial for smoking crack and chasing prostitutes. This is irrelevant nonsense. It has no place in this trial. These photographs, I'll show you what I think of these photographs. This, ladies and gentlemen, is what I think of these photographs, as should you.
Object to the theatrics, Your Honor.
All right. With that understanding, I think, Mr. Zellen, you're trying to be emphatic, but proceed.
Your Honor, I am simply trying to defend my client as he deserves.
Proceed. Objection overruled.
You know what, Your Honor? I take it back. I am going to agree with Mr. Burns. Tell you what. These photographs would you saw up on that screen, what is now my garbage, it is so irrelevant that, you know what? Let's make it relevant. I will agree.
Could you at least ask him to tape the photos back together?
I may just do that later on.
All right,
I'm going to theoretically tape them back together because let's assume that it's relevant. I will adopt Mr. Burns' position, and those photographs are relevant. So, you're probably asking yourselves, how could that be now? How could he change his mind? Tell you what, Hunter Biden did not deserve the money that he got. Hunter Biden did not deserve the perks and the benefits that he got. He's a drug addict. He's smoking crack while he's awake, while he's asleep. He's with prostitutes. He's making amateur porn. I agree with the prosecution. Is that what someone would be doing and doing all kinds of big business? And all kinds of work in that condition? I agree with him. The answer is no, he could not. And if he could not, ladies and gentlemen, the government cannot have it both ways. What the prosecution is doing is trying to put lipstick on a pig. And I'm agreeing what we have here is a pig. But a pig who could not, would not, did not have the wherewithal, physically, emotionally, or mentally, being addicted to crack and being addicted to porn. He simply didn't have the time to do the things that the prosecution is suggesting he did. Think about what it would take to be able to go and influence the vice president of the United States, the second most powerful man in the world, whether it's your father or not. But again, I'll grant you, the prosecution can prove that Hunter Biden is a Biden, and his father is Joe Biden. And Joe Biden was the vice president of the United States. He's now the president of the United States. And I will agree with the prosecution. He traded on his name. But trading on your name without more means nothing. If, as a child, you want to trade on your family's name, if you have a rich, if you have a powerful parent, knock yourself out. You want to pay me boatloads of money because of my last name? Ladies and gentlemen, that in and of itself is evidence of zero, nothing. The proof doesn't show that Hunter Biden did anything more than smoke crack, sleep with prostitutes. Pictures? What do they tell you? You saw an email? Wait till I come back before you. You'll be asking yourself, where did that email come from? Who wrote that email? Is that email even real? Roadmap? The prosecution talks about a roadmap? Roadmap to where? I like prostitutes, I smoke crack, but where is the roadmap to the proof of the improprieties? The actual, hey, Dad, I need you to take care of something for me. Hey, Dad, the Russians want this, the Chinese want that, the Mexicans want this. Where is that evidence? It's not going to be here. No facts, assumptions. That's what you will see. The proof here only shows that my client took all of that money and stuck it up his nose, or put it into a crack pipe, or spent it on prostitutes and escorts, and the rest of the time he spent wanting to be an amateur porn star. What you have here, as I like to put it, is a lot of sizzle, but no steak. You'll hear about the laptop from hell. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the laptop from hell was broken, much like the prosecution's case. Because, ladies and gentlemen, think about it for a moment. If I have a problem with my laptop, information that could take down an empire, take down my father, ruin us, do you think maybe I might have the ability to go to somebody who would take care of that for me? Someone I knew, someone I trusted? No. As the prosecution would like you to believe, I'll just take it to a stranger. What the hell? What am I worried about? Ask yourself, does that make any sense whatsoever? And our witnesses will explain to you how easy it is to hack into a laptop, how easy it is to compromise a computer, how easy it would be to smear the Bidens. And you will hear from our expert the elements of FARA and why here the prosecution's theory simply doesn't hold water. Ladies and gentlemen, assumptions are not evidence. And we will go through this case and we will watch the prosecution's roadmap, and I will come back before you, I promise you. And we will see together how the assumptions mean absolutely nothing, and that the prosecution has failed miserably, other than to destroy what is left of my client's life.
Thank you, Mr. Zeller.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Also, you too, Mr. Burns.
Yes, sir.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, you have heard the opening statements of prosecution and defense, and we will resume these proceedings by Mr. Burns calling the first prosecution witness.
Thank you, Judge. At this time, we call John Paul Mac Isaac, the Mac shop owner, where Hunter Biden delivered his laptop computer, Judge.
Sir, please be seated.
Thank you. Sir, how did you first come into possession of the laptop?
Hunter came into my shop on April 12th, 2019. He came in with 3 laptops. He requested data recovery from them. They were all suffering from...
Hearsay?
Overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor. You can continue.
So he came in with 3 liquid damage laptops. One of them was a complete write-off. The second one only had a couple inoperable keys, so I gave him a keyboard and said he could do the recovery himself. And the third one needed a little bit more effort to get the data off, so that's the one that I had to check in.
How did you know it was Hunter if you have a visual impairment, sir?
Well, at first I didn't recognize him. It was during the check-in process. I asked him for his first name, and he said Hunter, and then I asked him for his last name, and he said kind of sarcastically Biden, as if he expected me to know who he was.
Right.
And then he provided me with his contact information.
Are you familiar with the Mac shop agreement, sir?
Mm-hmm. Yes, very.
Could we take a look at that, please, on the screen? Equipment left with the Mac shop after 90 days of notification of completed service will be treated as abandoned, and you agree to hold the Mac shop harmless for any damage or loss of property. So I'm asking you to explain that to the jurors.
Well, it's pretty much a boilerplate in the service business. If say a customer comes in and they needed me to replace a screen, if they decided that they wanted me to purchase the part, install the part, and I've completed the repair, but then they decided they didn't want to come in and pick it up and they didn't want to pay for it, after 90 days, I'm allowed to take those parts out and take that, recoup those parts and then sell what I can to kind of recoup my loss in labor. It's a standard procedure, and I explained it to Hunter.
Let me turn your attention to an email that lays out his income. You familiar with that?
Yes. The income.
Objection. Thank you, Your Honor. It says that he joined the Burisma board, and we still need to amend your returns to reflect the unreported Burisma income. Does that jog your memory about what this is?
Yes, I remember during the verification process, because the laptop would keep shutting down, I couldn't just clone the drive. I had to literally just drag and drop files from the laptop to a storage device. And to make sure that I was doing the job correctly, I had to verify the data. And this file stood out, had a purple dot next to it. I clicked on it, and that's when I saw a lot of money exchanging hands. That concerned me.
Right. On a related concerning topic, sir, did you not come across photographs?
Unfortunately, yes, I did. It's an occupational hazard, though. It's not the first time.
Right, of course. I understand that. And what type of photographic material did you come across? Objection.
Overruled. We've already gone into this, Mr. Zellin, in terms of the materiality and relevance. All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor. Sir?
Well, there was a lot of that. A lot of homemade videos, a lot of pictures of Hunter.
Yeah. At what point did you decide, sir, to contact the Federal Bureau of Investigation about this matter?
When the laptop became my property in late July, I proceeded to kind of research what was on it to make sure that what I had seen was what I perceived as criminal activity.
Objection. It is certainly not for this witness, Your Honor, to decide what's criminal and what's not. That's Your Honor's job, that's the jury's job.
Thank you, Judge. We'll move on. And after you did, in fact, contact the Bureau, the FBI, what did they do in response, sir?
Well, at first, my father reached out to the FBI in October, and they basically told me.
Objection. It's not responsive to the question, Your Honor.
Judge, a little
we're here for semi-probable cause in one sense, so that'll be permitted.
Well, then perhaps, Your Honor,
within a limited context.
Your Honor, then perhaps the prosecution can call Mr. McIsaac's father, because I cannot cross-examine someone who's not here.
Judge, Mr. Zellin knows full well that you don't have to call the father in a probable cause hearing.
That's correct.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Proceed.
So, backing up just a little bit, the question pending, so to speak, is what was the FBI's response to you contacting them?
Well, like I said, they threw my father out of their office. They didn't seem like they wanted to touch the laptop with a 10-foot pole until finally in December 9th of 2019, they came to my shop and issued me a subpoena for the devices. And then after that, they enlisted me to help them access it. Then they told me that in their experience, nothing.
Objection. You're safe.
Overruled in this case.
Please continue.
They told me that in their experience, nothing ever happens to people that don't talk about these things. And then that was the last time I dealt with the FBI.
And explain to the jury, if you might, how did this end up with the newspaper, the New York Post?
So I was worried that the FBI now knew that I was in possession of the laptop, but they never acted on the evidence that was on it. So I enlisted the help of my father and my uncle once again to reach out to members of Congress. When they failed to act, I eventually gave a copy of the laptop to a lawyer representing the President of the United States.
Thank you, sir. Your Honor, I have no further questions.
Gentlemen, perhaps this is a good place to break for recess, and we will take up when we come back with cross-examination of Mr. John Paul McIsaac in this mock trial of Hunter Biden.
Mr. McIsaac. I could have walked into your shop and said, I'm Hunter Biden, and you wouldn't have known the difference. Isn't that true?
Your Honor. I just assumed that it was Hunter.
You assumed. Thank you.
We know that Joe Biden met with Hunter Biden's overseas business partners, at least a dozen of them.
I guess it's convenient you will take my client at his word and take my client's father at his word, but then in other instances, you just choose to completely disregard what they say.
Objection, badgering the witness.
Your Honor, that ain't badgering. The witness will know when I'm badgering. This ain't badgering.
Once you find out that he does crack and he's addicted to porn, he becomes the biggest target you can have for blackmail, anything.
Yeah, all right. Everybody's hitting the hay. I am too. That's really weird and boring, and I'm probably going to clip it out of the stream. Thanks, everybody, for coming and hanging out. Thanks, Sheila. Cashew, thank you. Bill, thanks. Hope, thank you. Good night, everybody. J&D, thank you. Sheila, again. Thanks, guys. I don't know. I'll see what I can do tomorrow for some documentaries. But I thought that was some good news today. I'm going to probably clip the rest of this crap out. Everybody have a good night. God bless everyone.